We'll go ahead. I've prepared a statement that I have copies of it made for folks after the hearing is over. I was happy to hear a lot of people mention that, you know, there's a lot of things that are factual and things that are not factual. Many of the statements that I make in this statement, I have footnoted as to where the source of these statements are. So if folks want to go back and take a look and see, did those people really say that or not, or when did they see it, or when did they say it, I have it footnoted here for you. So I want to include this obviously in the record. Much that has been written and said about the density map and regulations has not been based on fact and can be easily refuted. It is critical to the final decision on the fate of the DMRs that statements made and purported to be factual can be proven otherwise. Before moving to the body of my statement, I would like to make some comments related to the political climate that has developed around the debate of what to do with the density map and regulations. As most of you attending today are aware, contentiousness has engulfed the DMRs since their creation beginning in 2003 and ultimate adoption by the Lake County Commissioners in 2005. I began my personal journey into DMR land in 2006 and have continued to listen to and study all of the arguments, pro and con, since that time. I have been accused of having a personal vendetta against the DMRs because I had wanted to change the regulations, failed, and didn't get what I wanted. As is typical, this accusation is not true, and the accuser had not researched my action, my proposal, and put out another half-truth. For 2 years, I attempted to, and succeeded, in amending the density map on behalf of my daughter. I accomplished what the regulations allowed and in fact encouraged citizens to do, but only after opposition from the previous Lake County Planning Department, hours of time, and hundreds of dollars in expense. Based on my personal experience of what I have learned, I have concluded that I cannot support their continued use as regulations. What is most concerning to me is some of the public comment that has been made following the position that I have taken, a position that I have shared with the residents of the county, primarily through the newspapers. Since I have publicly taken a position opposed to keeping the DMRs as regulatory, I have been branded as a person unwilling to cooperate with CSKT, and they have made known their desire for keeping the DMRs regulatory. I have been willing to bend my philosophical beliefs on the DMRs in an attempt to cooperate, but that has been for naught. I would prefer to see the DMRs repealed and removed completely from our new growth policy, but I have been willing to retain them after amendments and allow our Lake County Planning Department to use the DMRs as a tool in future land use decisions. This compromise would put all citizens of Lake County on equal footing, which was a stated goal of the existing growth policy. But CSKT has been unwilling to accept this compromise. They want the DMRs to retain regulatory for one class of citizens and voluntary compliance for another class of citizens. I have tried to understand unsuccessfully why CSKT would be so opposed to moving the DMRs from regulatory to advisory for those citizens under Lake County's jurisdiction. For a nation that has fought against discrimination and unequal treatment under the law for decades, how can they support regulations that are inherently discriminatory against other people living here and who are under the county's jurisdiction? I believe part of the reason for the fierce opposition to a change in the regulations, and it is a fierce opposition, is that there are two distinct agendas within CSKT related to land use and development within the reservation and county. Tribal Council spokesmen have stated numerous times in public meetings that the tribe is very concerned about the rate of population growth of non-tribal residents on the reservation, which according to their statistics is about 10 times greater than the growth of the tribal population. The tribes want some control over this growth of the non-native people, and the DMRs are one tool that can be used. Along with the ability to control growth, the DMRs help the tribes stretch the dollars in their land buyback program and allows for the purchase of more acres by keeping land in larger parcels. The more acres they can purchase, the less land there is for non-native people looking to relocate here or for some of our young families to remain here. My belief is that it is not a function of a growth policy to control the growth of a certain segment of the county's population, nor protect their culture while taking away the rights of other citizens. The second agenda is legitimate and worth consideration. If the tribe sincerely desires to protect the precious open rural landscape and pristine environment that makes this place so special, as stated on the postcards they had people sign and mail postpaid to the Commissioner's office, then I think most citizens would agree with that goal, and as a Commissioner, I would support efforts to achieve that goal. Another part of the public comment process has been this. The present Commissioners have been told repeatedly that they have not listened to public comment that supporters of the DMR contend has been overwhelmingly in support of continuing the DMRs as regulatory. This is not a new allegation. In January of 2005, then Commissioner Mike Hutchin responded during a public meeting to a question about the public comment the Commissioners had received related to the draft DMRs. He replied by saying that the Commissioners had received about 300 letters, and 80% of those letters were opposed to the adoption of the DMRs. Some of the people in this room were involved in drafting and pushing for the adoption of the DMRs of 2005. I have read nothing in all of the minutes that I've gone through where any of you were complaining about the failure of the Commissioners to take a course of action based on public comment during the adoption process. Do we only complain that the Commissioners are not listening to what the people are saying when it disagrees with your position? I want to further summarize why I want the DMRs repealed as regulatory and moved to advisory. CSKT admits the DMRs are discriminatory, and I quote, "The county regulations don't apply to us, but we follow them to be good neighbors. We want them to be regulatory." The spokesperson goes on to say, "We have gone on record several times saying we would make them regulatory if that's what the problem is. CSKT's method of making them regulatory for Lake County and CSKT is to sign a memorandum of understanding between the governments. Signing of an MOU or adopting a resolution does not make the DMRs regulatory for the tribe or Lake County. It is not a contract. CSKT and Lake County knew in April of 2002, following an opinion from Alan McCormick of the University of Montana Law School, that the county and the tribes could not adopt regulations applying to both governments without action by the Montana legislature that would allow this to happen. This legal opinion was never shared in subsequent public meetings. 15 years later, CSKT continues to deceive residents by continuing to proclaim that there is a relatively simple way to accomplish this goal. The DMRs have not achieved their intended purpose. The purpose of the DMRs were to help achieve the goals and objectives of the 2003 Lake County Growth Policy. Page 118 of the Growth Policy contains 24 items that were to be accomplished. An analysis by Lake County Civil Attorney Wally Congdon done in 2015 stated in his opinion 1 item was completely accomplished and 9 were partially accomplished. The remaining items had not been accomplished in the 10 years following enactment. These numbers do not reflect accomplishment of goals and objectives. The public has little understanding of the map and the regulations and has limited knowledge as to how they are used in the Lake County Planning Department. This was an issue when the DMRs were considered for adoption. At a Lake County Planning Board meeting in 2004, the following statement is contained in the minutes. We're getting a fair amount of negative response. Unfortunately, a lot of the comments are not very well informed. Some of the letters that we're getting show that people really don't understand it. It's unfortunate. The same statement could be made today regarding the comments the county has received regarding the DMRs. DMRs have artificially manipulated property values. A quick example, the east side of Highway 93 in the Sunny Slope Hill area is designated 2-acre density, while the west side of the highway is designated 20-acre density. Which 20-acre parcel has the greater value on the real estate market? Property that potentially could be divided into 10 distinct parcels, or a piece of land that has no development rights? I have heard a generalized statement pertaining to zoning. Zoning takes property rights away but increases property value in return. The DMRs indeed take property rights away and in addition decrease property values. A CSK attorney has stated at a public hearing that the tribe has followed the DMRs 100% of the time. If anyone would be tempted to believe that this is true, I encourage you to take a close look at what CSKT's proposed development at Big Arm looks like. 30 RV sites, 17 cabins, 3 teepees, a restaurant, event center, and casino, and over 1/2 acre of impervious surface. This development would fail to get approval through Lake County Planning Department. One reason for denial is that it significantly violates the density prescribed for this area. There are other examples of non-compliance with Lake County's interpretation of the DMRs. Prior to adoption, the DMRs were said to be, and I quote, not perfect, but will evolve over time and will be revolutionary for Montana. This has not happened. No other county in Montana has adopted anything like we have, and only one map amendment change has been made in 15 years. The regulations state that the DMRs are not intended to prescribe land use, but included in the regulations is a discussion of characteristics of land that shall not be considered for development. Defining certain land as non-developable does dictate land use. The DMRs were scheduled for review 1 year after adoption, and then in the 5th and 10th year of each decade. By my count, 3 reviews have been missed. The lack of reviews puts some doubt as to whether or not the regulations are still binding. To those people who don't want the DMRs because you have your piece of paradise and you don't want anyone else to have what you are enjoying, I have this to say. You remind me of what was happening in the white suburbs of America in the 60s and 70s. White people didn't want blacks moving to their neighborhoods, and they didn't want black children attending their schools or black families in the pews next to them at church. So they passed zoning laws that made it difficult, if not impossible, for blacks to move into their neighborhoods. If this is what you want, create your own zoning district and zone people out. Don't demand that the county do your dirty work for you. Exclusionary zoning is illegal, but it's not unconstitutional. Finally, the loss of tax revenue to land being put in trust is the most pressing issue Lake County now faces and will continue to wrestle with until some kind of release is found. It is impossible to determine exactly what the amount of property tax loss is due to the fact that the Montana Department of Revenue does not assess tribal lands and buildings and improvements once they are placed in trust. We do know that many taxpayers are struggling to pay their property taxes, as evidenced by the 936 property owners who are delinquent with the first half of their 2017 taxes that were due in November. The total dollar amount delinquent is $700,000. Another bit of revealing evidence that does shed some light on this issue is this. The county taxable value for fiscal year 2017 and fiscal year 2018 worksheet traces these changes county by county. Lake County's difference in taxable value from fiscal year 2017 to 2018 showed an increase of about $696,000. Neighboring county increases were Flathead, $18,317,000, Missoula, $12,874,000, Sanders County, $4,318,000. One possible explanation would be that a significant dollar amount of tax properties are going off the rolls while barely enough is coming in to replace what is lost. I cannot support a regulatory document that enhances the ability of CSKT to buy more land to put in trust and further reduce tax collections. Now let's for a minute put the shoe on the other foot and entertain this hypothetical situation. Suppose CSKT was proposing new regulations for their members and offered Lake County a seat at the table to write those regulations. Lake County proposed many changes to what CSK initially proposed, and CSKT made the changes requested. Part of Lake County's desire to see the regulations adopted by CSKT was that the county was concerned that the tribal population was outpacing the growth of the non-native population. Lake County assured everyone that if CSKT adopted the regulations, Lake County would voluntarily comply. 15 years after adoption, CSKT let it be known that they were considering making the regulations advisory for the tribes and their people. Lake County didn't want any changes to the regulations, so they mounted a public comment campaign imploring CSKT not to take this action. Lake County would be sharply criticized for taking its approach like this to CSKT's proposed action and accused of meddling in another government's affairs. The rules of engagement for the two governments are very different, and Lake County is regularly taken to task for not cooperating with the tribes. Cooperation is working together for mutual benefit. When I see mutual benefit, I will cooperate. Thank you. So we're ready if there is a motion, or someone wants to make a motion. Planning board, they can have their